Now, under Ebrahim Patel's leadership as Trade, Industry and Competition Minister, decisions on the future of the automotive sector have already been taken, with many challenges remaining, especially around OEMs. David Furlonger, editor-at-large for the Financial Mail, joins us to discuss the challenges Minister Patel's successor is likely to face in this sector. Thank you so much for your time, David. Let's first start off with the kind of foundation that Ebrahim Patel will be leaving in the automotive industry. What size shoes are they?
If I'm honest, not terribly large. If I may turn the question round a little, what the motor industry, I think, would like to see is someone with a little bit more urgency.
Okay.
Ebrahim Patel is a charming man. He comes across very well, but he tends, or over the last few years, he's tended to talk rather than deliver. Bearing in mind that we had the electric vehicle white paper came out the end of last year, a number of years late, and there's still a lot of confusion, or rather uncertainty, about electric vehicle policy and in fact general policy. So I think his successor has good foundations to start from, but he needs to hit the ground running and to walk the talk, if I can put it that way.
I must ask you, David, when we do reflect on Ebrahim Patel's time at DTIC, of course, more urgency needed. But what inroads were made, wins that we saw for the auto sector while he was at the helm?
Look, he was there when the Automotive Production and Development Programme's second phase was introduced in 2021, and it's a very good programme. The challenge is that the APDP is part of the broader South African Automotive, or SAAM, South African Automotive Master Plan. And that's where the catch comes in, because the master plan is a joint venture between the industry and the government. And the industry on its own can do only so much. But without the ports and the railways functioning, and they don't, as we all know, without the infrastructure, I mean, when manufacturers have to wait 30 days extra for their components to arrive because they're sitting outside Durban Harbour, a lot of things haven't worked. So again, he's overseen the introduction of a good policy, but he has also overseen or shared in the overseeing of a lack of response and lack of activity by government itself in its part of the plan.
Would you say currently, David, that business conditions are not supportive of the auto industry from both a supply and demand side at this point?
Look, let's look at the supplier side. Let's look at local content. Let's look at the components manufacturers.
Yeah.
One of the aims of the APDP and the master plan is that local content should go from 40% to 60% by 2035.
Yeah.
Now, over the period of the master plan, that should be going up by 2.3% or 2.3 percentage points annually. It's actually regressed over the last 5 years. In fact, in 2018, according to the Industry Association, NAMSA, it hit 48%. If it did so, it was very briefly, because it's been back around 40% almost all the time since then. So there are a lot of things which need to be done. And of course, we're heavily dependent on exports. 2/3 of production in this country goes to export, so we're heavily dependent on what happens overseas. So, to be fair to Patel and to the government, a lot of the conditions are outside their remit, are outside their control. And this is one of the challenges that our industry has, that it can do only so much on its own. The rest is down to political determination, but also overseas activities.
Well, the political determination factor is one that's very topical at this point. And I'm wondering, from that perspective here, David, is there a concern that what might emerge post this election could actually lead to a regression in the gains that we have made in the auto sector? Or are we also convinced that this is one of the few industrialization success stories we have, and that should be something that easily gets the buy-in of anybody who comes into government?
Look, the motor industry is the poster boy for South African manufacturing. It's being used as the example for other industries to do what they can do with government commitment and with policy consistency, although policy consistency should not be confused with doing nothing. We are blessed with a long-term policy. And I don't think, having put so much into this industry since 1995, when it turned from a most appalling industry into what is now a pretty effective and very competitive global industry, I don't think the government can afford to let it go. So I think we're in a period of stasis at the moment where nothing is happening. But I do think, give it 2 or 3 years, we are going to see progress again. It's just a question of how long this current period of not quite inactivity, but let's come back to that word stasis, how long that lasts for.
Do you think that, just as we wrap up the conversation, David, that everything that's been happening, the challenges that you talk about, the logistics issues, the infrastructure challenges, but also the fact that there's this kind of winds of change coming into the political arena, that could affect appetite for investment into the auto industry in South Africa?
I don't think so. If you think that Ford in the last couple of years put in 16 billion rand, Isuzu's doing billions. All of them at the moment are investing heavily. And remember that when they invest, if they're investing for a car, it's for a minimum of 7 years. If they're investing in a light commercial vehicle, in general, it's for at least 10 years. So I think all the overseas multinationals are still confident in South Africa. They're not get up and go people. They don't take quick decisions. And they all still believe that Africa is the future, that all the major markets overseas, they've reached pretty much as big as they're going to get. There is still this appetite for Africa. So I think that there is still a big appetite, as I said before, from these multinationals for South Africa as the gateway into Africa.
Well, David, always a pleasure having you with us on Motoring Friday. That was David Furlonger, editor-at-large for the Financial Mail.